I found out that my friend and my wife were planning to steal my fortune. I grew up with a strong sense of loyalty and trust. My father, a self-made businessman, instilled in me the values of hard work and integrity. After his passing, I inherited the family business and a considerable fortune, determined to honor his legacy. My wife, Sarah, and I had been married for 10 years, and I believed we had a solid partnership, both in life and in business. My friend, Mark, had been a constant presence in my life since college, someone I trusted implicitly. He had even become a confidant in my professional and personal affairs. However, things began to change subtly over the past year. Sarah became more distant, often preoccupied and evasive when I tried to engage her in conversations about our future. Mark, once a reliable sounding board, seemed increasingly interested in the intricacies of my business dealings, asking questions that, in hindsight, were too probing. I dismissed my unease, chalking it up to stress and the pressures of managing a growing enterprise. Then, one evening, I overheard a hushed conversation between Sarah and Mark. Their tones were conspiratorial, their words too intimate. A chill ran down my spine as fragments of their plans filtered through the door. They spoke of dividing assets and securing their future, terms that had nothing to do with our usual discussions. It was in that moment that the perfect facade of my life shattered, revealing a sinister plot that threatened everything I had worked for and held dear. From the outside, our marriage seemed flawless. Sarah and I appeared as the epitome of a successful, loving couple. We hosted elegant dinners, attended charity events, and took vacations that painted a picture of a life filled with mutual respect and affection. Our friends envied us, often commenting on how lucky we were to have found each other. But beneath the surface, there were cracks in the foundation. Sarah's once warm and engaging demeanor had cooled, replaced by a distant and often distracted air. She spent more time on her phone, her screen lighting up with messages she quickly hid from view. Our conversations, once rich and meaningful, had dwindled to superficial exchanges about our daily routines. I tried to ignore the growing unease, convincing myself that it was merely a phase, a result of the pressures of maintaining our lifestyle and running the business. I planned romantic getaways and made extra efforts to rekindle our connection, but Sarah's responses were lukewarm at best. Meanwhile, Mark's presence became a constant in our lives, his advice and input increasingly central to both personal and business decisions. Little did I know, the perfect facade was masking a betrayal that would soon come to light. The first signs of trouble were subtle but unmistakable. Sarah began to withdraw from our intimate moments, often citing fatigue or work stress. The laughter that once filled our home was replaced by an uncomfortable silence. I noticed her making excuses to avoid spending time together, often retreating into her own world with her phone as her constant companion. There were moments that, in hindsight, should have set off alarm bells. Sarah seemed preoccupied during our conversations, her mind clearly elsewhere. She started attending social events without me, claiming she needed space to unwind with her friends. Meanwhile, Mark's visits became more frequent. He would drop by unannounced, ostensibly to discuss business, but his conversations always seemed to pivot towards personal matters. One evening, I found Sarah and Mark in deep conversation, their heads close together and their voices hushed. When I entered the room, they quickly changed the subject, their behavior more suspicious than ever. I tried to shake off the growing unease, but it gnawed at me, a persistent whisper that something was terribly wrong. My attempts to bridge the growing gap between Sarah and me felt futile, and I could sense that I was on the brink of discovering a painful truth. As Sarah's behavior grew increasingly erratic, my suspicions deepened. Late-night phone calls, whispered conversations, and sudden changes in her demeanor became a regular occurrence. The trust that had once been the bedrock of our relationship was eroding, replaced by a gnawing sense of betrayal. I found myself questioning everything, wondering how long this charade had been going on. Mark's actions only fueled my suspicions. His interest in my financial affairs, once casual and friendly, had become intrusive. He began suggesting changes to my investments and business strategies, always under the guise of looking out for my best interests. His eagerness to be involved in every aspect of my life felt more like an invasion than a friendly gesture. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started keeping a close eye on Sarah and Mark, looking for any concrete evidence of their betrayal. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon a string of text messages on Sarah's phone. The messages were explicit and incriminating, detailing their plans to siphon off my assets and leave me penniless. The discovery was both a relief and a devastating blow. My worst fears were confirmed, and the reality of their deception hit me like a ton of bricks. I realized I needed to act swiftly and decisively. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that Sarah and Mark were far deeper in their conspiracy than I had initially thought. Their betrayal was not just a personal affront. It was a calculated attempt to destroy my life. I resolved to confront them and expose their treachery, but I knew I had to gather irrefutable evidence to protect myself and my interests. The day of the confrontation was one of the most emotionally charged moments of my life. I had spent sleepless nights piecing together the evidence, documenting every sordid detail of their plans. Armed with the incriminating messages and financial records, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and determination. I knew this confrontation would change everything, but it was a step I had to take. I waited until Sarah and Mark were both at our home. Their casual demeanor and false sense of security made my stomach turn. I called them into the living room, my heart pounding in my chest. As they sat down, I laid out the evidence before them, watching their faces shift from confusion to shock and finally to guilt. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded, my voice trembling with rage. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, while Mark's expression turned to one of defiance. They both tried to speak at once, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of excuses and denials. But I had anticipated their reactions. I calmly presented the messages, the financial transactions, and the plans they had meticulously crafted to betray me. There was no room for denial. The weight of their deceit was laid bare, and they could no longer hide behind their lies. The emotional impact of their betrayal hit me like a tidal wave. I felt an overwhelming sense of loss, not just for the end of my marriage and friendship, but for the life I thought I had. Sarah's admission that the affair had been ongoing for years, driven by greed and a desire for freedom, was a devastating blow. Mark's cold admission of his role in the conspiracy confirmed the depth of their betrayal. The confrontation left me shattered, but it also fueled a resolve within me to take control of my life and protect what was rightfully mine. Discovering the full extent of their betrayal was a gut-wrenching process. The affair wasn't just a fling. It was a calculated, years-long scheme designed to strip me of my wealth and stability. Sarah and Mark had meticulously planned every step, exploiting my trust and leveraging my financial resources for their gain. I uncovered messages outlining their strategy to drain my accounts slowly, siphoning off money into hidden funds. They discussed legal loopholes and even concocted a false narrative to paint me as a neglectful husband, positioning themselves to gain sympathy and support from our social circle. It was a cruel, heartless plan that left me feeling utterly betrayed and foolish for not seeing it sooner. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Every intimate moment, every shared laugh, now felt tainted by their deception. I couldn't fathom how Sarah, the woman I loved and trusted, could be so cold and calculating. And Mark, my closest friend, had used our bond to manipulate and deceive me. The weight of their treachery was suffocating, and the anger and pain threatened to overwhelm me. Despite the emotional turmoil, I knew I had to stay focused and methodical. I documented everything, ensuring I had a comprehensive record of their conspiracy. This wasn't just about confronting them. It was about protecting myself and ensuring they couldn't weasel their way out of the consequences. As I pieced together the sordid details of their affair, I prepared myself for the legal battle ahead, determined to reclaim my life and hold them accountable for their actions. Unveiling the full truth was a painstaking process. I gathered every piece of evidence I could find, from text messages and emails to financial records and bank statements. Each new discovery added to the weight of their betrayal, but it also strengthened my resolve to expose them. I hired a private investigator to dig deeper, uncovering more damning details that I had missed. The investigator's findings were both shocking and validating. Sarah and Mark had set up offshore accounts, transferring money in small, unnoticeable amounts over the years. They had meticulously planned for a future together, using my hard-earned fortune as their safety net. The depth of their deceit was staggering, and I realized that their betrayal was not just a personal affront, but a calculated attack on my entire life. As I compiled the evidence, I struggled to come to terms with the emotional fallout. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and a profound sense of loss. The people I had trusted most in the world had conspired against me, and the life I thought I knew was nothing more than a facade. Yet, amidst the pain, I found a steely determination. I would not let them destroy me. I shared the evidence with my lawyer, preparing for the inevitable legal battle. The process was grueling, but it was necessary to ensure that Sarah and Mark faced the consequences of their actions. As the pieces of the puzzle came together, I felt a sense of clarity and purpose. This was my chance to reclaim my life, to expose the truth, and to start anew. The struggle to accept the reality of their betrayal was a painful journey, but it was also a necessary step towards healing and moving forward. When the moment for the final confrontation arrived, I was prepared but still emotionally raw. Sarah and Mark thought they could waltz back into my life and spin their web of lies to win me over again. They hadn't anticipated the depth of my resolve or the mountain of evidence I had compiled against them. Sarah approached me first, tears in her eyes and a pleading look on her face. She claimed she had made a mistake, that her actions were a cry for help, and that she still loved me. Mark stood beside her, attempting to play the supportive friend, his facade as impenetrable as ever. But I saw through their act. I saw the desperation in their eyes, knowing their plan was about to crumble. With a calmness I didn't know I possessed, I laid out the evidence before them. The stolen funds, the incriminating messages, the offshore accounts. It was all there, indisputable and damning. Sarah's face paled as she realized the gravity of the situation, while Mark's bravado faltered, replaced by a look of sheer panic. "You thought you could betray me and get away with it?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "You thought I wouldn't find out? You've both underestimated me." Sarah's tears flowed freely now, her sobs echoing through the room. She begged for forgiveness, claiming she had been manipulated by Mark. Mark, on the other hand, tried to shift the blame onto Sarah, insisting it had been her idea all along. Their unity dissolved in an instant, replaced by mutual accusations and desperate attempts to save themselves. But I was done with their lies. I made it clear that there was no chance of reconciliation. The evidence would be handed over to the authorities, and they would face the full consequences of their actions. As I walked away from the confrontation, I felt a sense of closure. The emotional turmoil was far from over, but I had taken the first step towards reclaiming my life and ensuring that justice would be served. The fallout from the confrontation reverberated through every corner of my life. The impact on the family and close friends was profound, and I found myself grappling with both personal and public consequences. Sarah's actions had not only shattered our marriage but also affected our circle of friends and family. Many were shocked by the revelations, struggling to reconcile the image they had of Sarah with the reality of her betrayal. The gossip and judgment from our social circle were harsh, and I found myself isolated as I navigated the storm of public scrutiny. Some friends reached out with support, but others distanced themselves, unsure how to react to the scandal. The emotional toll was equally heavy. The trust that had once been the foundation of my relationships was irrevocably damaged. I wrestled with feelings of betrayal and anger, and the process of healing seemed daunting. My mental well-being was tested as I dealt with the stress of legal battles and the ongoing public fallout. The sense of loss, of not just a partner and friend, but a whole chapter of my life, was overwhelming. Yet, amidst the turmoil, I began to see the importance of rebuilding and seeking support. Therapy became a crucial part of my healing process, helping me to process my emotions and develop strategies for moving forward. I learned to lean on the few true friends and family members who stood by me, and I found solace in small victories and gradual steps towards regaining control of my life. The impact of Sarah's betrayal on the family was a harsh reminder of the far-reaching consequences of deceit. It was a lesson in the fragility of trust and the necessity of vigilance in relationships. The journey to rebuild and find stability was long, but it also highlighted the strength and resilience I never knew I had. After the confrontation and the subsequent legal proceedings, my life began to take on a new shape. I had to rebuild not just my finances, but also my emotional well-being. The path to recovery was neither quick nor easy, but it was necessary for my personal growth and future stability. I focused on moving forward, taking practical steps to regain control of my life. The legal battles, though draining, resulted in a fair resolution. Sarah and Mark faced the consequences of their actions, and I was able to secure my assets and restore my sense of security. I took the opportunity to reassess my priorities, both personally and professionally, and began making changes that reflected a renewed sense of purpose and self-worth. Rebuilding my personal life was a gradual process. I sought therapy to help me process the betrayal and to develop healthier relationships moving forward. I learned to set boundaries and to trust more cautiously, valuing the integrity and authenticity of those around me. I also found strength in focusing on my passions and goals, rediscovering hobbies and interests that had been overshadowed by the turmoil of the past years. For those who might find themselves in similar situations, my advice is simple yet profound. Trust is essential, but it must be earned and continually verified. Pay attention to the signs of dissatisfaction and dishonesty, and don't be afraid to confront issues head-on. Protect your interests, both emotional and financial, and seek support from trusted friends or professionals when needed. Most importantly, prioritize your well-being and remember that, even in the face of betrayal, there is always a path forward. Embrace resilience and use the experience as a stepping stone to a stronger, more fulfilling future.